So the person that worships God, not to take something, but to give in terms of service, dedication, love, sweet songs, good value, right? Rather than a person that is derisive or dismissive. So by understanding ourselves, we can understand 80% who God is. The other 20% we need help, which is normal because it's beyond our own experience, and we have to comprehend something that's going to be beyond our experience. But we can understand by hearing submissively. Just like a child doesn't study anything, right? When you're 0 to 5, right? So one day your mother points at a pencil and says, "What is this?" And the child doesn't know. The mother says, "This is a pencil." Repeat, "This is a pencil." So the first day the child goes to school, the teacher holds up a pencil and says, "What is this?" And that particular child raises her hand and says, "It's a pencil, teacher." And she says, "Right, how do you know?" "My mom told me." So the child never studied anything. Right? She simply accepted a piece of knowledge from an honest authority, who she accepted with respect and submissively. And she learned, even though she has no other means of knowing. So even though knowledge of God, that last 20%, is beyond our comprehension, if we listen submissively from a genuine authority, we can still understand, a lot. We'll never understand everything, but we can understand a lot. So we concentrate completely on dedication. So in life there's attachment and detachment. Right? So we understand that everything belongs to God, so we can't be attached to something that doesn't belong to us. And because everything belongs to God, we can't be detached from it either. Right? Both those positions are false premises. So what is our position? Our position is one of dedication. We dedicate everything to the service of God, knowing that God owns everything. He created everything. He controls everything. And He's allotted for each of us our minimum needs. Just like I don't feed the elephants in Africa, but yet they eat every day. If I tried to keep one elephant, I'd go bankrupt. They eat like 400 pounds of hay or something a day. But God is feeding them, the birds, the elephants, the snakes, the rabbits, and human beings, and everyone's getting their minimum needs. Now, there's a verse in the Vedic literature that says if we learn to accept our minimum, and we use the rest in the service of God, then we're never affected by the laws of karma, or laws of action and reaction. Just like today we see there's a Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or there's the Indian-Pakistani conflict in Kashmir, or there's the conflict in Libya, or there's, conflicts are because two people or two groups want the same thing at the same time for their own purpose. And they get into a fight. So that's an example of non-concentric circles of interest. But concentric circles of interest never have any points of intersection. So if we can focus on serving God, then if I please God or you please God, we're both happy, because the purpose is to please God. But if the point of interest is pleasing myself, then you and I will eventually get into a fight. Eventually, maybe not right away, but eventually, because we'll both want the same thing, and we'll compete for it, or fight for it, or kill for it, or whatever. So conflict in this world is caused by ignorance of our relationship with God. And therefore, philosophically it's called the difference between the seer and the seen. We're trained by television, radio, novels, comic books, the internet, to be the seer. And everything we see is potentially an object of pleasure for us. Right? So people, television is a fantastic instrument for pleasuring people. They'll sit down and spend half a lifetime watching it, right? Because they're deriving pleasure from what they're seeing. They're the seer, and inherent in that idea of being a seer is I am the enjoyer and the controller. So I have the remote control of the television, meaning I got the power. So I can flip the stations as I wish and go back and forth and whatever. So, but the actual fact is God is the seer, and we are the seen. In other words, God is the controller and enjoyer, and we're actually the enjoyed. So it's complete opposite of how we're trained in the material world. So if we can understand that, then we act in such a way as to please God. By doing that, we become civilized. It's like Jesus on Gethsemane, eventually he says, not what I want, my Lord, but whatever you want that I will do. So he surrendered to the will of God and became an instrument in his service. So that's the whole idea here.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, the focal point is Radha and Krishna. But yet, Krishna appeared in other manifestations or incarnations. So if you know anything about the history of India, there's the epic. There's two major epics in India. One is called the Ramayana.
Right. And the students actually are reading that at school.
And we're having a huge festival this weekend because it's the birth of Lord Rama.
Right, and I invited the students to come, so we'll see if some of them do.
We have a great play Saturday night. So, yeah. So this is Krishna's appearance as Lord Rama. And he appeared in the eternal... One in the middle, absolute middle with the bow. And next to him is Sita Devi, his wife. And on the right hand, or our left hand side, is Rama's brother Lakshman. And over here you see the monkey servant of the Lord called Hanuman. Hanuman was exactly what Darwin was looking for. He's a mixed breed, human and animal. But he never found it. Never read the Ramayana.
So Rama in the middle.
Yes. Sita, his wife, and Lakshman, his brother. Lakshman and Hanuman.
And Hanuman is
his servant.
Is the servant, the monkey.
Yeah. Why the red palm? That's a sign of distributing mercy. The red necklace. Actually, it should be pinkish. Pinkish reddish. It's a sign of giving his mercy to everyone. If you come and see the play, you'll understand.
What time?
7:30 Saturday night. So, Rama came to establish two things. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says that whenever there's a decline in the practice of religion and a concomitant rise of irreligion, at that time, either God comes himself or he sends a representative from himself as a son or a teacher or whatever, to do three things. To deliver his devotees that are in distress by irreligion, to destroy or punish the miscreants, and to reestablish the principles of religion that have become deteriorated by the politicians and so forth, the rock stars, and baseball players, and so forth. Right? So Rama came in a time where, and he established two things. One was Ekapatni Vrat, which means that a high-class man is always faithful only to one wife his whole life. So Rama's father had three wives, that's why he got into trouble. And so Rama remained faithful his whole life to Sita, and a high-class woman is always faithful to one man. So even though they had a lot of travails, they always remained faithful to each other. So he established the principle of Ekapatni Vrat, or the vow of one, let's say, eternal consort or eternal spouse. Secondly, he established the principle of Rama Raja, which means the ideal paradigm of a leader in society. But in order to do that, he had to give up his own personal family happiness. Okay. A little bit different than today. People become leaders and they stuff their pockets with other people's money and do all kinds of things. But Rama gave up even his own personal happiness and lived basically like an ascetic, even though he was the king of a very powerful kingdom. And because of that, the people loved him, because he was an example. Right? And that's called Ram Raja, saintly, a kingdom in which there's a saintly king, and in which the people, they focus more on spiritual enlightenment rather than material aggrandizement. Because the king himself is a paradigm. You know. So, therefore, the Ramayana is like, if you want to understand India, you have to read the Ramayana. The whole norms of behavior, everything is exemplified by Lord Rama and his relationship with his wife and his brother. His brother had he could have taken over the kingdom when Rama was forced to go into exile. He could have tried to kill Rama because he had the entire army. And his mother, one of the wives of his father, gave him that, forced Rama into exile. Bharat never even entertained that thought for 1 second. He remained as an ascetic himself, although he managed the kingdom, but he put Rama's shoes on the altar. And he always bowed down to them. And you can compare that to Aurangzeb. I don't know if you know Indian history, but in modern times there was a king named Aurangzeb. He was one of the sons of Shah Jahan, who's the man who built the Taj Mahal, right? And the fathers split India into 4 parts and gave 1 part to each son, with an army, with treasury, with everything, right? And India is a big place, an opulent place. But Aurangzeb put his mother and father in prison, killed 2 of his brothers, and one other ran away. And he took over everything, right? So you compare Bharat, who never even entertained any thought of taking advantage of his brother, always remained a humble servant. So there's no one in the history of the world that is so exemplary as Bharat. So there are a lot of things going on here. The relationship of husband and wife, one of complete loyalty and chastity and dedication to the other. The humility and surrender of a brother to his older brother, complete dedication. And then Hanuman, who's not even a human being, right? He is accepted by the Lord and empowered to give an example of pure devotion. And when Rama went into exile, it's incredible what happened. He distributed his mercy to subhumans, to tribals, to half-human, half-animals, to total animals, vultures, and then fiends, and then rakshasas, who are man-eating demons. He converted them all by his purity. So that proves, this might be one difference between Christianity and the Vedic tradition. In the Vedic tradition, the understanding of the soul it's like complete. The individual soul, you have an individual soul, I do. It existed before birth in this body, it exists in this body, and it exists after death of this body. There's full eternality of the soul. So in Christianity, you only have one person that you sort of understand that full eternality, that's Jesus Christ. He existed before he incarnated in this world and afterwards. But we are supposed to begin to exist when we're breathed into the body, and then our salvation is, the body dies, it might go to purgatory or might stay in limbo, and then at the second coming of Christ, those who remain faithful go to heaven in their body. So therefore the importance of the cemetery and preservation of the body and all these things. Vedic theology accepts that the soul has nothing to do with the material body. It has its own individual existence, independent of the material body. But when we go against the will of God, like Adam and Eve went against the will of God, at that time, the soul is entrapped in a particular type of body that's commensurate to those persons' wishes to dominate and enjoy the material world. They can't dominate and enjoy anything in the spiritual world. So they come to the prison house, which is called the material world, where they can pretend to dominate and enjoy, but then they have the laws of karma, the action and reaction, that entangle them. But their salvation is when they realize, this is all superfluous to me. I'm actually not this body. I'm a pure soul. I'm part and parcel of God. I come from God. Therefore, if I reject this attempt to be the controller and enjoyer in the material world, and I act now as the servant of God, just like the example of Jesus, then I can be free of it completely and go back to my original position in the spiritual world. So the example of Rama and his brother and Hanuman and his wife and Sugriva, the king of the monkeys, and Jambavan, the king of the bears, subhumans, and then all these Rakshasas, they all became enamored by Lord Ram, and they surmounted their material limitations by their love for God. So it's a very profound history.
Is there a meaning to the tree?
The tree of life, yeah, symbolical of the tree of life. Everything is symbolical.
Right.
Just like in a Catholic Church, everything is symbolical. Yeah. Okay, so now, that's the Ramayana. Now we come over here. This is Juggernaut. Baladev and Subhadra. Left is white and Subhadra is sort of golden.
You're going to have to tell me those names again.
Juggernaut, Jaganath. So Nath means master, and Jaga means universe. It's a name of God. He's the master of the universe.
And that's the black.
Yeah, and that is a special form of Krishna. I'll explain the story really quickly. And then his brother is Bala Ram over here.
Is the white one.
Yes. Bala means spiritual potency.
And that's, say that again, Ba.
B-A-L-A. R-A-M.
Okay.
Balaram means spiritual potency of love, of God, of the ecstasy of love. And Ram means one who is the reservoir of that love and ecstasy. And then Subhadra, S-U-B-H-A-D-R-A. So Bhadra means auspicious, and Subhadra means most auspicious. So she's the sister of Krishna. So, 5,000 years ago, Krishna appeared in his original form, from which everything emanates. And he had pastimes in this world, in India. Right? Of course, at that time it wasn't called India, it was called Bharat. And at a young age, he left his natal village called Vrindavan and went to free his father who was in jail. It's a long history. But from that point on, he never came back to Vrindavan. But everybody in Vrindavan, especially Radha and the other cowherd women, loved him. And the only way they could assuage the pain of separation was to always think about him, to reenact pastimes that he had with them, to chant glories, just like you heard us chanting. And just remembering the Lord. It was the only way they could sort of, lessen the pain of the separation. Then one time, there was an eclipse of the sun in a holy place called Kurukshetra, which is some distance from Vrindavan. And at that time, Krishna was living in Dwarka, which is on the western edge of India, right in the ocean. That place is still existing today. The palaces that Krishna built are underwater in the Indian Ocean, but they can be seen if you have a submarine. And it's being excavated. It's underwater archaeology. Anyway, at that time, Krishna decided to go to this holy place called Kurukshetra and see the eclipse of the sun. And when the residents of Vrindavan heard that, they hadn't seen him for many years, so they decided to go too. So people had set up different camps. There were people from Delhi and people from Dwarka and Vrindavan, from all over the place came, and they set up their tents. And Krishna and his brother and his sister were very anxious to see their mother and father. They hadn't seen them. And the gopis and other residents of Vrindavan. So as they approached the camp, they could hear them talking. And of course they were talking about Krishna. That was the only way they could lessen the pain of the separation. And they were actually deformed. And this captures a moment of extreme ecstasy for Krishna and his sister and his brother, where their bodies deformed, hearing the words of intimate, ecstatic love of the residents of Vrindavan. So this is very emotional type of deity of Krishna to worship. Every year we have a big festival at Alki Beach where we make like a chariot and we bring Krishna out. And it's symbolic of the inner desire of Radharani and the gopis, who when they actually saw Krishna, they were praying in their mind, please, let's leave this place and go back to the pristine, rustic setting of Vrindavan where we can express our love for you more freely. And so forth. So it's a long, wonderful history, but that explains this particular form. They look very strange. Yeah. All three of them are in a state of ecstasy. Their eyes have expanded, and their arms have sort of bled into their body, and their limbs have sort of, instead of erupting, have gone inside their body. Okay, now over here is Lord Chaitanya, Chaitanya, and Nityananda, Nityananda. So this is a special incarnation of Krishna came 500 years ago. Chaitanya, right? He's Krishna, and his brother Balaram is Nityananda. So you have brother here too, and Krishna. So Nityananda is Balaram, and Krishna is Chaitanya. They came 500 years ago. They appeared in Bengal, and they came because there was a serious deterioration again of the principles of religion, and they came to establish what's called the Yuga Dharma, or the path that's recommended for God realization in a particular age. Y-U-G-A, and then Dharma. Yeah. So they began what's called the Sankirtan movement, S-A-M-K-I-R-T-A-N. And that means congregational chanting of the names of God. Because in this age, it's very difficult to have a spiritual life. You have cell phones, you have wars, and you have economic problems, you have tsunamis, and you have nuclear reactors that break down, and you have social unrest, and you have pornography, and this thing and that thing. So it's difficult to have a spiritual life. And knowing this, the Lord established a very simple process for attaining God realization. And it doesn't require any type of qualification of a person. You don't have to be, a great sage or a lot of education. Simply chant, dance, and feast. It's called Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. So we chant to please the ears of the Lord. So we try and chant nicely. We dance for the pleasure of the eyes of the Lord. We offer different pleasant articles like incense and flowers and things. Nice clothes. We dress the deities every day. Give them fresh garlands. We treat them not as statues, but as real persons. And we spend a lot of money, serving them. And so, chanting, dancing, and feasting. So we'll go down and have some holy food also. Something like the Eucharist, but more like in the early days of Christianity, where it was a whole dinner. Although the Eucharist is very similar to what we do, because something ordinary and material is transformed into something extraordinary and spiritual. If you don't believe in that, then you're not really a Christian. You have to believe in the Immaculate Conception of Jesus. You have to believe in the Eucharist. So we also believe that anything material is actually spiritual, but it's covered over by this perverted desire that we want to enjoy it separate from God. But when you take away that perverted desire and you desire to offer it to God and use it in God's service, then its spiritual aspect becomes manifest. So then she's giving a blessing to everyone. These represent the feet of Srimati Radharani. She's very merciful. One can approach God through her, just like in Christianity and Mother Mary. So you approach Jesus through Mary. But in this case, Radha is actually Krishna's eternal consort, and Mary is his mother. So it's a little bit different, but it's the same idea. Rabha. R-A-N-I. Rani means queen, and Radha means the one who is the most sincere worshipper of Krishna or servant of Krishna.
So please go and take the blessing so that I can capture you.
I don't have to. She'll come.
For your students. This video is for your students.
Oh, thank you. I will, actually.
Yeah, she'll come. Just like in Catholicism, you have the saints. So we want to get the blessings of the saints.
Please.
And he began this simple process of congregational chanting, feasting, dancing, and basically engaging in unselfish acts of service. Very simple process. Anyone can be a rocket engineer. So that's why, sometimes you see us chanting in the streets or different things like that. We're always chanting here. Having a good time, basically. When you want to have a good time, what do? You make a feast, and you dance, and you party, right? So we don't need champagne to party. We party by just feeling, joyful by chanting and dancing and having a nice dinner and sharing. Actually, our whole thing is sharing, because God is the proprietor. I don't own this building. Krishna owns it. So we act like that, and whatever He gives us, we share. Okay, that little plant there is called Tulsi Devi. Tulsi. She is a sacred plant. It's not marijuana. Sometimes people think we're growing marijuana. It's holy basil. And there's a long story behind Tulsi, how she ended up being a plant. I won't tell you the whole story, but if you come over here, you see there's also a rock. Black rock is sort of decorated, and that's small. That's different up there, right there. That rock is called Shalagram. S-A-L-A-G-R-A-M. That's G-R-A. Shalagram Shila. S-I-L-A. Shila means a rock. So Shalagram Shila, this is a special rock that only exists in a river called the Gandaki River in Nepal. And it's a rock in which a special type of worm bores into it and carves specific designs on the inside. Of course, we don't break it. But if you break it and open it up, you'll see it. It's designed like a conch shell or a lotus. There's 108 different designs that are carved on these worms. Pretty good architecture. Now, at one time, Krishna... I won't tell you the whole story because it's a long, interesting story. But because of counter-cursing, the woman named Tulsi was turned into a plant by Krishna. And she counter-cursed Krishna, turned into a rock. And Krishna, of course, Krishna always has the upper hand, so he said, I will never accept any offering unless your leaf touches the food. So, Tulsi is the personification of sanctification. So whatever we offer to Krishna, we have to have a Tulsi leaf touching it, and Krishna will accept it. That's how holy she is. simply keeping her in your house, watering her, and taking care of her, then all inauspicious things in your house disappear, like sickness or misery or whatever, and one is conferred with love for Krishna, and then you use her leaves to make offerings to God. So then here is a lion with a young boy in his lap. This is another incarnation of Krishna called Nara, N-A-R-A. Singha, but you spell it S-I-M-H-A, but it's pronounced Singha, like S-I-N-G-H-A. Singha means lion. So, like you'll meet Mr. Singh, right? A lot of Mr. Singh, like Mr. Smith here, Mr. Singh. Singh means a lion. So Nara Singha, Nara means a human, a man. So Nara Singha is half man, half lion. Another superior find for Darwin, if you could ever find it. And it's an incarnation of Krishna. He came to save his devotee named Prahlad, this young boy. He was the original abused child. His father was a demon named Hiranyakashipu.
I'm sorry, what was the name of the boy?
Prahlad, P-R-A-L-A-D. Prahlad. And he was an innocent boy, only 5 years old. His father tried to kill him because he chanted Hare Krishna. His father wanted to teach him to be a demon, cheating, lying, backbiting, and greedy. And the boy refused because while in the womb of his mother, there was a war where the father was in trouble, so the mother was saved by a saint called Narada. And he took her to his ashram and protected her while she was pregnant. And while she was pregnant, he would always chant the glories of Krishna and read the Vedic literature to her, the holy scriptures, and instruct her in spiritual life. So what happened? Her boy became educated in the womb of the mother. And when he was born, right from birth, he was a devotee because he had already been educated in the womb. He listened to the discussions, which is very instructive for modern society, especially when you get into abortion and things like that. That children actually learn while in the womb. So then the father couldn't understand because he always protected him and made sure he had never introduced anything spiritual. And he had special teachers for him to teach him to be a demon. And the boy was a devotee. Couldn't understand. So he finally confronted his son. He tried to kill him in many ways, but he couldn't. Because the boy was always remembering Krishna, protected by God. So then he thought maybe it's easier to kill his God. So he asked his son, "Where is your God?" And Prahlad was a little worried. He said, "My God is everywhere." Where? Is he here, right here in this column? He had hundreds of columns in his palace. So he pointed to him. And Prahlad said, "Yes." So he smashed the column with his sword, and then out came this incredible creature. It was half lion, half man, and tore the father apart. Actually tore him apart. And then to cool down the Shringadevi was like ferocious, and the whole universe was afraid of him. Prahlad garlanded and that cooled him down. And then he had Prahlad sit on his lap. Prahlad, of course, wasn't afraid of him. Everybody else was afraid, but he wasn't afraid because he recognized this as Krishna. And then the Shringadevi asked him, "What do you want from me, Prahlad?" He asked me for anything, I'll give it to you. And Prahlad said, I don't really need anything, because I chant your name, I remember you. But if you want to do something for me, then please deliver my father from death. Let him come back, bless him. Even though the father was trying to kill him for so long. So